All right, we're back. Tasty Crypto Show. I'm Ryan Grace, and with me today, Katie McGarrigle.
What up?
How are you?
I'm good. How are you doing?
Yeah, can't complain.
No?
No, I'm ready for Thanksgiving. I'm gearing up.
You're gearing up? What's your favorite part, like food-wise? Like, are you a turkey guy? Are you a sides boy?
Probably more of a sides boy. Yeah. Dessert.
Dessert? Pie?
Couple beers before the meal.
Oh, yeah. A couple.
Yeah, huh? Like 10. I don't know.
I like where your head's at.
Yeah, whatever the appropriate amount is. I'm not a big turkey Thanksgiving. I like it.
Yeah.
I eat it. I'm thankful for it, I suppose.
Yeah.
What about you?
Yeah, I think I'm more into the sides as well.
Okay.
But I'm not gonna be. I'm not doing much of the cooking, so
Yeah.
the person that just gets to sit at the table and eats
Nothing wrong with that.
cannot complain. I guess I should say.
And I wasn't saying as in of course you're not going to be cooking the meal, Katie. I've heard about your skills.
You unqualified idiot.
Yeah. No, just that I was in agreement. I won't be cooking any food either.
Yeah, I'm in charge of a dip. So if anybody has any dip recipes, drop them in the chat.
There you go.
Love to see them. I make a mean buffalo chicken, but because we're already doing poultry later in the day, I think I got to switch it up a little bit. I've done jalapeno popper dip before.
Okay.
I got a couple dips up my sleeve, if you will, but always curious to hear what other people are cooking up out there.
Let me ask you, this might be a controversial Thanksgiving dish or topic. Where are you at with mac and cheese?
I'm so pro mac and cheese.
Pro mac and cheese, okay.
Yes, so much so that at our Friendsgiving that happened 2 weeks ago, everybody else did, Brussels sprouts and mashed potatoes and sweet potatoes, and I was like, I'm bringing mac and cheese.
Okay.
And
yeah, it's probably a hit.
It was a hit.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was great. I like a mac and cheese on Thanksgiving. I know, you're right though, it is polarizing.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with that though.
Yeah.
Friendsgiving, did you ever do more than one? Because I was looking at somebody's, I don't know, it was on Instagram. They were on Friendsgiving too, and this was a week ago. And I was just like, oh my God, this sounds horrible.
I think that if anything, one group of friends, primarily the women friends in the group, would do the Friendsgiving. And then there would be another one that is kind of between Thanksgiving and the December holidays.
You got two Thanksgiving meals under your belt before Thanksgiving even starts.
Yeah, no, only one so far. Only one so far.
Okay.
But I think that there will be another iteration of the Friendsgiving, but between Thanksgiving and December. And that one would probably just be more of a let's go to a bar and eat chicken tenders.
Just
hang out. But we'd call it like that.
Sure.
But
you're not doing the turkey and the stuffing.
No, I don't.
Again.
Yeah.
For the third time.
Yeah, no. Okay. I Clink said he's gonna be he's cooking up and smoking some turkey breasts. And he said he's gonna do a Cajun one. That sounds kind of appealing to me as well. But yeah, I'm attending a household that does traditional types of Thanksgiving fare.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Well, we will be off on Monday due to that upcoming Thanksgiving holiday, but we're here today, Katie. Wednesday. What did I say? Monday?
Yeah.
Sorry, today's Monday. We'll be off on Wednesday. We're here today, though. That means one thing. The chat's open, so type in some crazy stuff. What'd you ask? What's your favorite Thanksgiving dish?
Or dip recipe.
Yeah, drop some dip recipes in the chat, if you will.
Yeah.
Where do I start? Crypto. Katie McGarrigle is here. This is episode 4. I'm loving this series.
I am too. I'm getting a lot out of it.
Good. I'm glad. We're going to talk about Ethereum today.
I'm excited for this because I now, thanks to you, subscribe to several newsletters, one of which is the newly named Tasty Crypto newsletter, even though it's a long-standing newsletter. What's the name?
Next to Orange.
Next to Orange.
If you try to figure out whatever the hell that means, right?
But that said, I now have several crypto-related newsletters that are hitting my inbox every morning.
All right.
As well as weekly, like the Taster Crypto one. Not an ad. But
thanks for the plug.
I see very frequently in the ones that I'm getting, you've got your top 4 or 5 that are just constantly being hit on. So I'm excited to learn the nuances and the differences between Ethereum and what we've already discussed in terms of Bitcoin.
Well, let's do it. And to set the stage, Katie, do you have any aside from you're seeing some of this mentioned in these email newsletters, do you have any familiarity, any domain expertise here as it pertains to Ethereum?
Only by osmosis when we did have the founder of Ethereum on the Tasty shows way back in the day.
It's really wild.
Yes, he was a young, I don't even know how to say his name, Vitalik?
Vitalik Buterin.
Yes,
Yeah.
okay, I didn't know quite how you emphasized what syllables, but we had him on the show back in the day. I tried to use my Jedi mind tricks to absorb his smarts. Can't say it worked.
Okay.
So the short answer is no, I don't have a ton of expertise as it pertains to Ethereum.
Good. Well, I think that's the best place to begin with then. Where do I start? Episode 4, Ethereum. If you missed the last episode, we covered the Tasty Trade trading platform, how to enable crypto trading on your account, how to place a trade on the platform. Talked a little bit about transferring crypto, so go back and check that out. Prior to that, though, did a little bit of an introduction to crypto. We talked about Bitcoin. Why is it interesting from a tech perspective? Maybe more so, why is it interesting to us on Tasty Trade, Tasty Live, from a trading or investing perspective? And today we're going to talk about Ethereum. We're going to kind of cover high level the technology. What is interesting about this? How is it different than Bitcoin? We'll talk a little bit as to why that relates into maybe an investment thesis.
Okay.
We'll cover that a bit more in the future. But stop me at any point, Katie, as you have questions. I know you do have your crypto questions at the end here that we'll throw up on the screen. But as I go through some of these slides, I want to try to talk about some of the concepts that make Ethereum different, arguably better in some ways versus what it can do compared to Bitcoin.
Okay.
I think that's fair. But yeah, again, stop me at any point and we'll go from there.
Cool, I'm ready.
Cool. So just like Bitcoin, when we're talking about Ethereum, we're talking about a couple things when we say Ethereum.
Okay,
We're talking about a blockchain network, the Ethereum network.
okay. So
Talking
that's
about,
similar to Bitcoin
yes.
in that there's a network.
Yeah, that's probably the first thing, the most important thing to understand is that these are blockchain networks. Bitcoin is a blockchain network. Ethereum is a blockchain network.
Okay.
So this is a technology first and foremost. But we talk about ETH. We talk about Ethereum. We'll call it both ETH and Ethereum. Kind of like you have big B, Bitcoin, and little b, Bitcoin. We have Ethereum, the blockchain network or technology, and Ethereum, the cryptocurrency or the token or the coin. So a lot of synonyms here.
Yes.
But we're talking about two things when we talk about Ethereum, but they're the same thing.
So it's not a big E, little e thing.
If you're
It's
religious, this might
Ethereum
make
and
sense.
ETH.
There's ETH and Ethereum, but I think when you look at ETH, I call it Ethereum. People call it Ethereum.
Okay.
But the token, the symbol ETH,
Yes, okay.
ETH. But yes, this is many things in one thing all at the same time.
I like that little subtle little joke you put in there. I picked that up.
Beautiful. So what is Ethereum? Well, it's a blockchain. Okay, great. Bitcoin's a blockchain. Why does that matter? What's different about this? Ethereum is programmable.
Okay.
We're going to get into some of the key innovations in a second. But the big difference between Bitcoin and Ethereum, at least initially, is that you can do more with Ethereum than just transfer value. Programs can actually run on Ethereum. So it's more than just a blockchain network for money. It's a blockchain network for, this is probably true of any blockchain network, but when I say for data, transactional data as it pertains to applications. We'll get into this, like I said, but applications can run on Ethereum as a result. It is programmable. It's very unique versus Bitcoin. An advancement, I suppose.
Okay.
Bitcoin was first, existed for many years. Eventually, Ethereum has its inception, I don't know, 2011, 2010, somewhere around there. But it's a couple of years, few years after Bitcoin.
Does it matter like what language it is programmed in? If it's an
Yes.
application?
Yes. So the Ethereum programming language is Solidity. So it has its own programming language. And there's a lot of technical weeds that we can get into
Yeah.
that support why it is programmable, how it works, some of the economic incentives that exist within there as well. But I think the real big takeaway here is just when I look at Bitcoin versus ETH, well, with the ETH blockchain network, you can do a bit more with it than you can the Bitcoin network.
Got it.
Now, Bitcoin, in terms of its use cases, digital gold, is very, very valuable. And there are some advancements that are coming and some innovation that's occurring on the Bitcoin network as well. But Ethereum is more of like a giant world computer.
Okay.
When you think about programs running on it, transactions occurring, data being stored, it's just, again, it's a bit more functional in terms of the use cases and what you can do with it than Bitcoin as a blockchain network.
Got it.
From the technology perspective.
Okay. I'm thinking like, you know, OG days where like I'm thinking Bitcoin right now is kind of like The Sims, where you just kind of build the house.
Okay.
But in Sim City, you're doing the plumbing and the skyscrapers and the transportation system and the waste disposal system, and you just can do more in Sim City than you can in Katie's 2000 version of The Sims.
Hey, that works. That works for me. You absolutely can do a bit more with it in terms of use cases, utility that's offered, and things that you can build.
For sure.
I
At this
suppose.
moment. But like you said, Bitcoin is evolving.
And we'll talk about some of those things that I'm sure, even though you might not be super familiar with Ethereum, I'm sure you've heard of some of these innovations in a second. But like I mentioned at the beginning, ETH is Ethereum's native token. That said, the network also supports other tokens. So if you recall, either the first or second episode, you were asking me about cryptocurrency, coin, token. I was using these terms interchangeably. When we think about a cryptocurrency, that is the native token, the native currency to the blockchain network. On a network like Bitcoin, there's Bitcoin. So that's the native cryptocurrency. That's the value transfer mechanism. Difference here with Ethereum is that you also have tokens that I suppose you could think of them being on Ethereum or on top of it.
Okay.
So you have the underlying cryptocurrency, ETH, the native token. You'll use that to pay for services, to transact on the network. You'll pay fees in ETH. But tokens exist on the network, can be sent back and forth to wallet addresses, can be held, can be used as a store of value or a variety of other reasons you might, or utility you might gain from them. We'll talk about that. But tokens exist on top of the network.
Okay.
So that's one advancement, I suppose, or innovation. And so Ethereum's innovations allow it to support tokens, fungible, non-fungible NFTs, decentralized applications, and multiple use cases such as gaming, digital art, and tokenized real-world assets. And so I think that's another important takeaway. What's different between Bitcoin and Ethereum? Use cases. It's not that one use case is better than the other. It's just that they have arguably different use cases.
Right. Okay.
At least today. You can use ETH as money or a store of value, but maybe Bitcoin is a better money or store of value. I don't know. Bitcoin can't run applications. ETH can run applications.
Okay.
And again, this is changing in some ways. It's early days there on the Bitcoin side. But those are the main differences in terms of how I think about it today.
Got it.
So that said, the innovations. Two things that you need to be aware of, but don't necessarily need to know
inside out.
Exactly. You don't have to be an expert here, but the two things that I think are important to be aware of, generally speaking, what are the innovations as they relate to Ethereum? Something called smart contracts, and then because of smart contracts, decentralized applications. Again, getting back to Ethereum is programmable. Applications can be built and run on top of it. So what's a smart contract? This is just code that's programmed to execute automatically when certain conditions are met. They're rules-based. They can't be changed once they've been deployed. They're completely transparent. You can look at any smart contract, and if you understand how it's written, you can understand what it's doing. You can see it, at least.
And does this apply to more than just if you are investing in Ethereum? Like when you say smart contract, it can be rules on anything that exists on the Ethereum network.
Yes.
Okay.
For the most part. Yeah. It's transparent. It's open source. And that's what's beautiful about this is you can see exactly how all applications are working. Now people can find vulnerabilities and there are hacks as a result, but everything is completely transparent. So it's out in the open. And I think over time it certainly becomes stronger as a result of that. It's certainly less fragile. But this is just code that's programmed to automatically execute. A lot of people will use like a vending machine as an example, like a digital vending machine.
Got it.
And what's interesting about this is it then leads to these applications that can run without intermediaries. That's the key. Okay, what's the big deal about an application on a blockchain network? Well, the blockchain network removes the need for traditional intermediaries in many different ways. That could be in terms of the service that the application offers. So the blockchain network fills the role through smart contracts through this application of maybe a bank when people want to borrow and lend. Instead, they're just smart contract-based applications that can automatically facilitate this.
Okay.
Or a marketplace might even be a better example. So you get back to the vending machine. You have something you're selling. I have cryptocurrency. This is a digital thing you're selling in this example. Well, through this smart contract, we don't need a third party to facilitate the purchase of this. I deposit the ETH. The ETH is there. We know that it's enough to purchase this thing. The thing is then purchased. Ownership is transferred to me.
Okay.
It's like a digital vending machine in the most simplistic way.
Okay. Makes sense.
Yeah. And so that's really it. High level. What's the difference here? Okay. One blockchain network does X. This one does X and more. Not necessarily better. In terms of it does more, yes, but the market cap of Bitcoin, when you think about this as an investment, is not based solely on what does the blockchain network do, if that makes sense.
Sure.
But that's what Ethereum is, again, at the highest level. And so a couple other things that I want to throw out there. We've talked about ETH. This is the native token.
Yep.
You're going to use this to pay to interact with these applications. And you have token standards. These aren't the only token standards, but the one that people are most familiar with, whether they're aware of it or not, but what they use is the ERC20 token standard. And this is just a standard that allows for a custom token to be launched on the Ethereum network. You write code to deploy the token, you set the parameters around it, and then these tokens exist on the network. People can trade them for other tokens, stable coins, whatever. So there's this kind of sense of liquidity. They can be used for a variety of purposes. They could be thought of as voting rights in the same way that if you're a shareholder of a company, you have voting rights. You might just simply use these to access something. They could be used as incentive rewards, or you just want to speculate with them. But these are tokens on the network.
Would you say that the most tokens that exist currently are built on the Ethereum network?
I would have said that as of recently. I don't know, though, because of what you're seeing on all of these other networks. Solana, especially with the launch of meme coins. So if we just look at
like
terms
what's the
of
new one,
tokens.
like chill dog with hat or something like that, and
Absolutely.
you're like, what?
So in that sense, it's probably not Ethereum anymore. But I guess if you look at what chain has the most value locked in terms of applications where there are assets that are locked into those applications, maybe that's Ethereum. You use Ethereum to facilitate some of these processes, the way that some of these applications work. Ethereum liquidity is necessary, if that makes sense. So if you just look at, okay, what chain has the most digital assets on it?
Sure.
Development activity, maybe not so much recently, but users, large user base, Ethereum, absolutely.
Okay.
So you have tokens that are on Ethereum, you have ETH, so you can buy both of these things. You can also trade NFTs. NFTs are just non-fungible tokens. It's a different standard. What's important here is that, again, they're not fungible. They can't be exchanged one for one with another NFT. I mean, you and I can trade NFTs if we wanted to, but that doesn't work one for one on chain in the same way that the Ethereum I have and the Ethereum you have is the same in terms of what it is. NFTs are basically just a unique identifier. They can be attached to things, and this then gives someone, digital ownership or represents ownership of something digitally. Most recently, this was profile pictures and artwork. It could be anything. It could be property rights. It could be...
Could be a lock of Tom's hair.
Could be, yes. And so you have real world assets in that case that are represented on chain in terms of the decentralized database and what that can facilitate, but they're attached to things that we know exist in the real world. Now, there's risks associated with that, right? Because something can exist on chain or be represented digitally, but could be destroyed in the real world. What's maybe happening today with a little bit less of that kind of risk, right? Like a car that's represented on chain and has to be stored in a garage, et cetera, is a little bit different than if we take what we call real world financial products or real world assets could be fixed income products, money market funds, and we represent those on chain. Now that's a real world asset represented on a blockchain. And that's when you start to think about the financial use cases here, maybe where it becomes a little bit easier to understand the value of Ethereum. So that said, let me kind of explain all of this as I think about it.
Okay.
Because we're just running through a bunch of technical terms, smart contract, decentralized applications, blockchain network. What are we really talking about here?
Yeah.
Well, if you think about this as a financial system, it's in my opinion, it's a little bit easier. It's a settlement layer. Okay. So we have this decentralized computer network where all these different transactions are going to occur. This network has certain features we didn't talk about, but basically secures these transactions, secures the data, stores a record of them permanently.
Right.
This record, as we know through the blockchain, is transparent, it's globally available.
Yep.
And this information can be used then to process other transactions automatically. So you have this settlement layer, and then applications can be built on top of it. So their data will be settled to this blockchain network, in this case, Ethereum. It can be referenced. You're going to pay fees for this to happen. So when you think about what's the business of a blockchain network in terms of a kind of financial service, well, it sells security. It secures transactions. It validates, verifies transactions, secures the data associated with them, and then that data can be referenced.
Okay.
And it's all decentralized. There's no bank or Google or anything like that that sits in the middle and could censor any information or data. We also know everything to be true that exists in transparent form on chain. And in order to interact with these applications, if people find value in this, you have to pay using Ethereum.
Okay.
Might be a very, very small fee, but that is when you now think of it purely as digital cryptocurrency.
Yeah.
What is that? Well, it's a currency that's being used in order to facilitate all of these processes. And that is a really interesting system to me, where now exchange activities, whether it's a marketplace or it's banking activities, can all exist on this money layer on the internet.
Yeah.
Somewhat permissionless, decentralized to an extent, available to anyone, and transparent in nature.
Yeah, no, I mean, and I think that was like the thing that when this was really starting to get a little bit more popular, and obviously it comes and goes, right? But that was the piece that was super interesting to me, was like the ability to kind of remove those barriers. And obviously I know there's still like exchange rates and fees and other things associated with it that we've already kind of talked about, but just like the democratization is not the right word, but that single unifying thing that, like you're saying, prevents or gives everybody access potentially to participate in the same ways without a bunch of extra like nuances to it.
Yeah, and it makes, when you think about the settlement of just transactions, it could be I'm sending value to you across this network, or let's think about I'm buying a stock, right? Today, that process can take a couple days as all of the different counterparties and all the different participants involved, basically get on the same page with the information that they have.
Yeah.
Technology has made that occur a lot faster in recent times, but when you have something like this, it's instantaneous and it can be verified and is readily available by anybody that has access to the network, and in this case has an internet connection.
It's not like T+1 or T+2.
It's not. And I think like, look, there's other sides to that. There's trade-offs where this is in its final form. Transaction finality is reached. This is not reversible. It can't be revoked in that sense. So you give up that, but you have this instantaneous settlement process that occurs.
Right.
And I'm not saying that one is necessarily better than the other. I just think that this is really interesting in terms of the value that it could unlock. This is very early still, but when you look at the real world applications that have been built on top of this, what do you use it for? Well, decentralized exchange, when you have tokenized assets, seems to be a pretty interesting use case. That doesn't involve any intermediaries in the process. There are people and companies that contribute code, that build these products and develop these applications, but in terms of how it actually works, it's almost beyond their control. It's just running on chain.
Right. So you have to kind of be willing to accept that and acknowledge that if you're going to play in the sandbox.
Absolutely.
So to speak.
Absolutely.
Okay.
But yeah, that is really the big difference then between Bitcoin and Ethereum. And if I didn't drill the point home enough, Katie, it's that Ethereum is programmable. Applications can run on top of it. And as a result, you have a slew of use cases that maybe you wouldn't otherwise.
So one word, and I know we're going to get into some of the questions that we have in the last couple minutes here, but one word that you didn't touch on, that you did touch on during the Bitcoin conversation was the scarcity element.
Yes.
Is there a supply of Ethereum that is capped?
No, but there are very interesting supply dynamics.
Okay.
And that's something that we'll address on the next show because it's going to take a couple episodes, I think, to get into some of the specifics around Ethereum and then how that relates to this investment case. But the quick answer to your question is no, there's no cap in theory on the amount of ETH that can exist versus 21 million is in code with Bitcoin.
Right.
That said, there is something called a burn mechanism. There can be, depending on the amount of activity on chain and what's happening, you can have an inflationary supply dynamic. You can also have a disinflationary or deflationary supply dynamic.
Okay.
The inflation rate of the supply of Ethereum today, though it can change, is, I believe, right around 3%.
Excuse me.
Bless you. A little bit, maybe a little bit lower than 3%.
Okay.
So it's not something where there's a limited amount or it's a scarce asset in that sense, but it's also not something where there's a hyperinflation of the supply that's likely to happen in any way. Yes.
Got it.
You can have an unlimited amount of tokens or meme coins, which we're seeing on other networks such as Solana. But in terms of ETH, there are some control measures around supply.
That was very well articulated. I think I understand it. I mean, what you've shared with me so far. I know that I'm just
good. I'm glad.
Tip of the iceberg.
Well,
here,
I think that's what we've set out to do is just explain the basics. You do not need to know the intricacies of how all of this works in the same way that I think we'd make the argument on the network that if you want to trade options and you want to understand the concept of implied volatility and option premium and what strategies to use, you do not have to be able to go up to the wall and write out the Black-Scholes formula and explain in intricate detail how that works, right? It's not accessible in that sense in terms of how you participate in the market. It's not even really relevant. It is how it works in many cases. You need a pricing model as we talk about option prices, but you don't need to understand the textbook definitions of how all these things work in order to be able to participate. But high-level concept, right? You do need to understand what's different between Bitcoin and Ethereum. Well, you can run applications and do a little bit more with Ethereum. That might make it valuable. It might make other competitors to it more valuable because they do the same thing but better. Who knows? We'll talk about all of that. But those are the main differences.
Okay. Yeah, because that was going to be one of my questions. And we'll save it because I know we're at time.
Well, there are many other Ethereum-like networks out there.
Yes.
And arguably some do what Ethereum does but better. But Ethereum has a bit of a first mover advantage. Today has the majority of assets on chain, but doesn't necessarily mean that it competes in the same way today from a monthly active user perspective or a transaction perspective or a speed or scalability perspective. So there's a lot that's changed since these two things first kind of came on the scene. And we have a lot to talk about, so I'm excited about that.
I'm excited too. Well, I have a lot to think about and explain to various relatives of mine while we're sitting down for Thanksgiving dinner, so thank you for that. Can't wait to see some brains explode, but yeah, we'll be back in about a week or so.
Yeah, we'll be back next Monday.
Oh yeah.
All right, well, I hope you have a wonderful Thanksgiving, Katie. Thanks again for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me as always, and thanks for the people in the chat that, made a little bit of fun of me too with some of the corny jokes we had today, but appreciate you guys coming and jumping on and looking out and hanging with us.
Cool. Well, we'll be back Monday. Until then, I'm Ryan.
I'm Katie.
Peace.
Peace.